Well, good morning, everybody. Thank you for coming today. We appreciate that. We're going to talk about a couple different things today, and what I want to do is let's get some house cleaning things out of the way. I know Chad's got a list of things that he wants to touch base on, and then we're going to have a couple guys that came off a really good month last month, and if they'd be oh so kind, is to kind of share with us kind of a little bit of strategy stuff, what they're doing, and they don't have to give the name, keep the names to protect the innocent or guilty or whatever, but just give us a kind of a general overview of what's going on, so we can share and we can all find similar success. So, Chad, are you here?
I just got in.
You just got in. All right, you know what? I'm giving you the floor already, brother. To just go over a couple house cleaning items that we wanted to touch base on before we turn the tables over to these guys and start talking a little strategy stuff.
Not a problem. Just and some of you folks on the call may have experienced this, but we've been getting a lot of paperwork in that is outdated paperwork. And so we've had a lot of stuff hit underwriting issues and things like that. So I guess first and foremost, work with your agent director. Make sure that you've got the most current paperwork. If you go to the back office and go under paperwork, if you pull that off, that is always going to be the most up-to-date. And then the other thing with that is make sure that you've got all of the information that we need on there. I think a lot of times people forget Social Security numbers, voided checks, start dates. All of these things slow stuff down, and we can no longer accept the older paperwork. So if you're turning something in that says 1300 or 1600 up on the top of the app for an app number, we have to submit the paperwork directly to First Data right away, and anytime you're doing the older paperwork, that's just going to slow things down. So when we write the deal, we want to get it through and running as quick as we can so we get you paid right away. And then I guess that's the support side of things and the paperwork side. And I'll turn the floor back over to Chuck.
All right, excellent. Well, the paperwork's how? Yeah, definitely make sure you have updated paperwork. Banks. As things change in the industry, they have to upgrade their paperwork with different language and things of that nature. So, so let's talk about, we had a great month last month. We had a lot of big hitters, and Chad will know the numbers. Who do we want to talk to first, Chad? You mentioned it this morning that we wanted to do some strategy stuff with these guys.
Okay, well, I guess a couple of guys. And the difference between just surviving in this business and really thriving in this business, a couple of guys that really stepped up last month. Cam, I think he's on the call. He had 7 accounts turned in last month, plus he had an existing customer that he re-signed up for another 3-year term. We had Gordy on. Gordy, you on the call too?
I'm here.
All right, Gordy turned in 6 accounts, 6 deals last month, and we've got a lot more still coming in, and so those are kind of the numbers. I know we had a couple people that were over 10 deals that won't be on the call today, but
Brian hit 20, and he'll be on shortly.
Okay, good. Brian had a rocking month last month. 20 new accounts last month. So Brian will come on, and it's a lot of accounts, and when Brian gets here, we'll definitely have him share his story with us and how he got there. But I know. Let's start with Gordy. I mean, Gordy, you've got a couple new relationships you're building up, and you're getting a referral source, and kind of tell us what's going on, man.
Well, I was working on this relationship with the bank for a year and a half before anything actually finally gelled. But now that has happened, they are actively pushing all of their branch managers, and there's 5 banks in this holding company, but they're actually pushing all their branch managers and new account folks to really go back to all of their commercial accounts and to talk to them about merchant services, and they're leading that with the EMV and making sure that they're up to date. And so we're getting more and more opportunities to talk to people, and some of those are real small and some of those are real big, but it's an exciting opportunity. And it just took a long time to get there. It was a lot of hand-holding to get to this point.
Right, right. I mean, how long you say you've been working that relationship?
Probably a year and a half to get to this point where we're finally getting all their business.
Wow. Okay. And what's that mean? I mean, I know I saw one account come through that we're waiting to get some final stuff on, guys in the hospital or something, but how much do they do per month at the grocery store?
Over $1 million.
$1 million a month. And there's money in that deal. I know Chad had mentioned that, and there's certainly some revenue.
Yeah, and what happened with that deal is the bank is loaning this group the money to buy the new grocery, and it just becomes part of their 3 or 4 grocery chain, and that's hung up a little bit in the paperwork on the final close of the sale. But once that happens, then the other 3 are a little smaller than that. But they did over $16 million in that Houston store last year.
Wow. That's a big account. I mean, 22,000 clicks a month is what the statement that I saw. Mm-hmm. And joint ventures is definitely the way we like to do things. It makes life they're longer, as Gordy said. I mean, a couple of years on this deal, building the relationship. They take a while to gel, but when they do, and I'm sure you'd agree that you get access to accounts that you'd never get access to doing it any other way.
Absolutely.
I mean, that grocery store deal, I mean, he's tight with the bank. And they're going to, when you get to that level and you start running with those types of accounts, those aren't accounts you just walk in and work your way up the chain where you talk to the store manager. And because a lot of those owners aren't even on site, it's a whole different realm of business. But it's solid business, and you can see. I think on that deal you're going to make $600-800 a month on. And
that'd be okay.
Yeah, that's not a bad deal, is it? So joint ventures, for everybody on the call, and the 3 guys that we mentioned that had really good months with volume, and sometimes it's not deal count, it's volume. It's how much you're processing, how much revenue are you bringing in on a monthly basis. But those higher revenue deals and the higher deal count numbers come from joint ventures. And we've dealt with banks for, I guess, almost 20 years now. All over the country. So there's, if you're not sure, you can go in on the site. We talk about what it's like to deal with bankers. We talk about how to get in there, but get access to those accounts that the average guy or woman in this industry just doesn't get access to, but you get it through joint venture stuff. So, yeah, that's awesome. I'm glad you're finally. So you've really been working with the bankers in there to the street level bankers going out and promoting this more so now. Obviously, that's why you're
absolutely every branch. I know all the managers by name.
Okay, excellent. So you're staying in contact. You know them by name, building a relationship. Therefore, they're out pressing the. And you've had a couple other really solid deals come to that too. So that's really, really awesome. I appreciate that.
And they're lining those up, and like I said, they're going back to all of their current business accounts and looking to see where they can get the merchant service business. And the other thing that the president of the bank is doing is now on all business loans going forward, if they're going to loan them money for whatever reason for the business, he's going to get their merchant service business, and that's us.
Excellent.
Hey, Gordy, this is John Eliason. Great job,
John.
by the way.
Thank you.
Why did you get the deal? Why are they using you? Why you?
Well, I had a relationship with the president. He is a relative, so I started talking to him about this a couple of years ago, and they had their existing merchant services was Texas Independent Bakers that provides other services to them. But we got our foot in the door, and the other guys messed up and disrespected his people, and they threw him out. And I've got 100% of his business now.
So it's interesting, isn't it? What you just said. Granted, maybe some people in the call go, "Oh, well, he is related to the guy," but TIB, Texas Independent Bankers, if you guys don't know, is huge. They service a lot of banks, and I don't know if it's just Texas, but Texas A is a big state.
Yeah, that is
a lot of
Texas.
banks there. And they do huge amounts of business. They're no small potatoes sort of company that you just replaced. And it's interesting to hear, you may or may not have ever got it, even if you were related, but they played their cards wrong. And
Absolutely.
what Chuck mentioned is we've done this for working with banks about 20 years, and what you find is that a lot of our competition will play their cards wrong. And for if we go in there and our job is to give the banker, because in this scenario you've got two clients really. You've got the banker and you've got the merchants. You got to keep everybody happy, and bankers are almost always in the middle of some other agreement, and they're always for a few years. But we found that very often, I don't know what percent, maybe Chuck could throw in a little bit, chime in with what that number, but what percent of the bankers, we'll say, out there don't really like the company that they use for merchant services? What percent would you say, Chuck?
Oh, I would say well over half.
Yep, it's exactly what I was thinking. I thought, well, maybe at least 50%. So imagine all of these bankers out there, because they run into, like Gordy said, they disrespected them or whatever that comes in a lot of different forms. Like merchants got questions and they're just kind of aloof, or you know how it is to call customer service most anywhere these days. They don't know what they're talking about. They can't give you good information. The rapport and relationship isn't there. Communication. It's like good, solid communication just isn't there. So if you go in and you start massaging probably every banker in your neighborhood, I would say the likelihood of getting business out of it is nearly 100%.
Right.
Would you guys? Anybody disagree with that?
No.
No, I think it was extremely well played to be there when the competition made the potential customer upset.
That's exactly what they told me.
Yeah, I mean,
right.
you stuck in there and hung around and just waited for the other guy to screw up, and you can get a lot of business that way.
Well,
and that relationship deal on the front end, some people would say, well, he had a relationship with them. Well, that came about from just a conversation saying, hey, how are you guys doing this, and what opportunity do I have? There was some pushback from some people on the board initially because of the relationship. But we just showed them what we could do and kept showing them that we could improve on the product that we were going to offer their customers. And then when the other side messed up, we were there.
Right. Well, and I think there's something that you got to keep in mind with this too, because things are relative. And when you go to some of these smaller banks, these 5-6 location banks, and they're hooked up with a real big processor, let's say, or TIB. TIB is huge. So TIB deals with a lot of banks that are much larger than the one you're dealing with. So it's almost like what happens, and I don't know if it's conscious or subconscious, in TIB's eyes, your bank didn't produce it. They're not a big hitter for them. So, I think things kind of fall on the back burner sometimes. And these smaller banks are going, look, we need the level of service that we're providing our customers, and you're not providing it to them. And so when you come in, because I would imagine, Gordy, that this deal is much more important to you than it would be to TIB.
Absolutely.
Right, because it's all relative. This means a lot more to you, so you're going to handle it more with kid gloves, and you're going to give them the level of service that they want.
And by the end of June, we will close more business than they wrote through TIB all last year.
Well, yeah. Well, because they don't like them. And we've seen that. We have a bank that we deal with here locally. Same thing. We've been dealing with them for a couple months in a relationship as far as an agreement is concerned, and they were with another company at John, 6 years, something like that, 5 years. They're with another company.
Well, it's 2 whole cycles of contracts, so a good 6 years.
Yeah, 6 years. We've already written more business with that bank in 2 months than they did with their last company in 6 years, because they just didn't like it. And they're like, you know what? And imagine you're going, hell no, I'm not sending my customer over there. I'm not sending it to that. And then they get into
Imagine being a banker and feeling like that.
Yeah,
it's like, oh, crap.
It makes your job really hard.
Well, and the next step of this regarding referrals is the president of the bank knows the president of a lot of other banks just like him.
Yeah, that's right. They're all.
Yeah, you'll find out they're all friends too.
Yeah, right. They're birds of a feather flock together. All right, Brian, I'm going to call you out, man. Go ahead.
You are.
Okay, yeah, I am. You don't have to say what the deal is. Don't say what the deal is, but you and I talked about a real healthy deal that, when Brian and I were talking about this one evening last week, he goes, man, I'd have never gotten this deal hadn't it been for my bank relationship. And you want to share some volume on it so we have an idea what it looks like for fun?
Yeah, they do about $40 million in cards a year.
Okay. $40 million a year, and what'd you figure the money that's in it right now?
$95,000 a year in profit.
$95,000 a year. Wouldn't have gotten this deal hadn't you had the bank relationship, most likely. And
this came out of a bank in a town of 1,600 people in the middle of Iowa. I mean, it came out of nowhere.
Wow, $40 million a year in credit card volume. And there's
Brian, how did you fall across these guys?
Well, the way that I fell across them is playing the same thing with the bankers. You know, they're all in. I don't know. They go to compliance meetings together. They go to training together. You know, they all work for different banks, but they all are around the same place. You know, so once you meet one or two of them. This particular bank president was at a meeting with another one that I'd had for like 3 or 4 years, and he says to him, hey, we hate this credit card crap, and this chip thing's coming, and we want out. What did you guys do? They said, well, we'll have Brian call you. So I called him up, and we had a deal with him in 2 weeks, you know, because his buddy said that I was the go-to guy for this, and we're barely 3 weeks into the relationship, and this fell in my lap.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
That's wonderful, too.
Yeah, it is really wonderful, but, you know, once most people get over the phobia of dealing with bankers, because bankers tend to make most people uncomfortable because they have to ask them uncomfortable questions and stuff. They don't really bother me, but they bother a lot of people. And once you get past that and develop some relationships with these people, you can kind of network your way through these guys, and that's going to bring you a whole lot more business than wandering up and down Main Street trying to pry them out of nowhere.
Well, let me ask you, Brian, on those bank relationships, because I know you got a handful of bank relationships, how long did you say the first one took to kind of come together?
Well, the first one was pretty easy because that's where I banked.
Right.
They knew
so
this is what I did.
That's a good place
to
start.
They're a smaller family-owned bank. They knew me. I knew them. They knew I was doing this, and they basically said, we hate doing this. Would you do it for us? And I go, okay, sure. Now what do I do? Because I don't want written 2 dozen.
Yeah.
And the next bank was a friend of that banker. You know, the bank presidents were buddies, and that's how I got that one. And then it turned out that he knew one in another bank, and it's just kind of it's grown from there. It's just all out of the first one is, you know, who he knew and who they know.
Right. Right.
And so now they're in a.
So you wrote a couple. You said you wrote, so everybody knows. You wrote like a couple dozen accounts. Let's say 20, 25 accounts, and then you wandered into you went into the bank. So you had written a few, and you know it's interesting to and Brian's been doing this for a few years, and it's an interesting thing. It's like Gordy. It was persistence. Gordy started talking about a year and a half ago. Didn't do nothing between now and then. You know, you're playing these different. Like Brian said, it sure is a whole lot easier than running up and down Main Street trying to leverage a deal out of somewhere. And the 24 that you wrote before that, though, were from your town, right? So you go out and you're writing business, you're getting some confidence, and then you go into the bank, and then it makes a little more sense after. You know, it's interesting. To the persistence goes all the victory. You know, it's interesting to see people that come in and they're wrestling around with things, and you go, man, you know, just get some of this under your belt and start building these. Either build your own network or tap into other people's network. And if you're going to tap into somebody else's network, you know, who can you tap that has business clients? And banks are one. And it's interesting to see everybody's story, how they just don't fall into your lap until you deserve them to fall into your lap, kind of thing, isn't it?
Oh, definitely. It takes a lot of persistence. He was saying a year and a half. I've had relationships that cultivated longer than that. I've got a bank that's been on the stove for 5.5 years, and they're just getting ready to finally do it.
Right.
That's how it works.
And that's how it works. But, I think a couple things to keep in mind. I mean, if you bank at Wells Fargo, if you bank at, B of A, obviously you're not going to go in and, snag that deal. They're too big. They have their own. But, if you're banking at a smaller bank, anywhere between, 2 to probably 10 locations, they're in that wheelhouse to approach. You're a customer. And we actually, the bank that First Financial banks with, we process their cards too. So you got to think about that. Those are people you do business with, and I think Brian hit it on the head. They go, most people are uncomfortable with bankers because they ask uncomfortable questions. Well, turn the tables. Get in there, find out what they're doing, build that relationship, and I know Gordy, 2 years working on this deal. Well, it's a home run. And he's going to make a lot of money. Brian's, generating a lot of revenue. I mean, just off this one account that he's up to bat on, would make that's like that 500-year flood kind of thing. That's like once every 5 years you get a deal of that magnitude. If you're probably longer than that, because I've never had one that big. I don't think you have either, John. Have you? One. We had one like that. So
yeah. And that too. That came from a bank too. It wasn't. We made like $50,000 a month off that deal.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
That was a bank.
Yeah, it was a bank referral.
They're out there, guys. But just so think about that. Think about where your bank relationships are. Maybe that's the size you want to walk in. If you're not sure, get you with your agent director. Formulate a strategy. I'll get on the phone with you, help formulate a strategy. I know, we have Brian's been open on what he's experienced. I know Gordy's been open. Cam's been open. Bruce has been open on what these guys are confronting and dealing with, and they deal with bank stuff and associations kind of thing. So, think about this from a long-term play. Running up and down Main Street trying to snag one here and there is a hard way to do this deal. But if you build relationships, those joint ventures makes your life a lot easier, and you can generate a heck of a lot of revenue. So be thinking about that. Thanks for Brian and Gordy, I appreciate you guys stepping in and sharing that. What I'm going to do is I'm going to just open it up real quick. Are there any questions or bottlenecks that you guys are running into right now that we can draw from anybody on the phone to help you with?
Well, I'm wondering about the Clover. I know that Brian has had some success with that, and I'm interested in it as well. And I understand that there's new things happening with them. Or with First Data and Clover almost as we speak, and I'm hoping that we can learn, or I can learn more about this, and we can learn more about this, and what it's going to or what it's going to do for us to help us with sell some business.
Yeah, definitely. I know next week I think Chad mentioned that this morning, that next week we're having a Clover call. We're going to talk about a couple of new things that Clover's running out or releasing that I think that will really be cool in the industry. I know we have, I think on the site too, we have a handful of different Clover educational pieces on there. I think a couple are videos and one's an audio like this. But yeah, next week for sure we're going to deal with Clover. And Clover's, we've had really good response with Clover from the merchant level. And the agent level. It's an easy sales process. So we'll definitely that's probably something we need to spend some time on to go over. You know what I mean? So let's.
Well, here's for people who don't know what it is. You should probably get with your agent director and make sure you do, because it's a pretty snazzy deal. It's a different piece of equipment. If you don't know, Clover's a different piece of equipment, and it's a neat deal with a lot of benefit. I don't know how much we want to go into that today, but Cam you've sold Clover, haven't you, Cam?
I haven't sold one yet.
Okay.
I got a couple of them that are kind of on the cusp, so to speak, but I have not sold one yet. And what we're trying to do is trying to figure out the ways that optometry can benefit from this, and and work in that particular area. And in the other merchant areas, it's a slam dunk. I mean, it works perfectly. But if it works perfectly for merchants, it should work great for these doctors, even though they have some sophisticated business management tools that they use.
Absolutely, and I'm curious. We can find out what is going to. You know, Clover's always coming out with new apps to fit particular industry types and things of that nature. So, you know, I think there's like 150 apps in development or something like that. So, well, let's definitely for next week. Clover will be the topic for next week with the rollout, and we're going to get some education this week on some stuff. So, I think that's a really good call for next week. Great question. Any other bottlenecks or questions before we part ways today? No? All right, that's awesome. Again, Brian Gordy, thank you. Cam, thanks for the question.
Next
Chuck.
Yeah, go ahead.
Chuck. It's Mark McCarthy.
Hey, Mark, what's up, man?
I got a question for Brian or I'm not sure who's the other guy, Gary maybe, about
Gordy.
the banks. Gordy, I'm sorry. Do you have parameters like when you go in, like what the venture as far as a percentage, or do they ask you, or I mean, what kind of a number are they asking back? I mean, is there a 10%, 20%? What are they looking for? Do they come in and tell you?
Let me interject here, just if Gordy and Brian, if you don't mind.
Sure.
I don't think they go in. I don't think they go in, because I talked to both guys throughout their bank building processes, and really they don't go in with a number. I think what they go in with is other things we can do. You know, if you go in with a number, then you're just like everybody else. What these guys go in with is they go in with a level of service that's kicking the crap out of the companies they're currently using. And then because that's where these bankers, and correct me guys if I'm wrong, you know, Gordy, Brian, if I'm wrong, you know, these guys are unhappy with their current relationships. They're getting into EMV's a big one right now. They're going, we don't even know what to do with EMV. We don't know how to handle it. We don't know what's going on. Or, you know, these guys are disrespecting our customers. Look, I mean, you can't even put a value on, if you're disrespecting my customers, I don't even send business to you, so I'm getting zero. I don't send anything to you, so what's 10%, 20%, it doesn't matter. I think what we need to get in there with and stay focused on is how do we establish and build that relationship. Then the numbers are kind of like, oh, okay, we just got to work out the numbers in, we're good to go.
Exactly.
Sell by price,
you
die
know,
by price.
the money's in the relationship, not the
what they get.
Not what they get, because they don't care. They're about. They probably just hand them over for free if they have a good place to put them. But they just want somebody who's going to take good care of them, because they make their money writing mortgages and doing all kinds of other stuff. That it's the money that we would give them back is peanuts, really.
Yeah, it's the service.
Okay,
it's the
so
service.
You're not
service.
The reason why I said I didn't mean to say that. I know it's a service. I got you, but I've been running into some things lately. This happens for a long time, and not just lately. But the bank's using the trick where they say that I'm dealing with a big place. And they say, well, our bank, we have a loan with them, and they say that they have to have all our stuff. Sure. I just lost a veterinarian because they're doing a loan to build a new building. And the bank told them that it has to be in the bundle. So that's going to have a better interest rate.
Yeah, that's going to happen. And that's, well, of course, because the bank wants as many services as they can with the customer because it's harder for the customer to leave that way. So, you're not going to the bank through the merchant typically. You're going to go to the bank, and when you deal with the bank, when they say
and you're going to be the one in the bundle.
Yeah, you're going to be the one in the bundle. They're doing.
Well, no, inside that, I'm just saying to you, and then there was a couple other ones, but they are picking up a piece. Obviously, somewhere along the line, they're getting something out of it. You know what I mean? I don't think maybe they are doing them for free. I'm in then. If that's the case, that's awesome.
But of course, but you can't. It's not that linear. It's not that cut and dry.
I got you.
The bank might go. They're doing that to hedge their own attrition. Because they know, a buddy of mine used to be pretty high up in Wells Fargo, and he goes, look, they preach at Wells Fargo. They go, look, we need 8 of our services in each customer's hands. We want insurance, we want, a savings account, checking account, CDs, loans, whatever. They want 8 products in their customers' hands. So The credit card processing piece is just another product in their hands where the customer feels more tied in with that bank. It's not necessarily because the bank's making a ton of money off of it. It's just it's one more piece for their attrition. Does that make sense?
It's small, but yeah, no, I got it. It's a small, tiny piece. I understand.
It is a small, tiny piece. So
you go in, with the service end of it. That's it. Okay.
It's all based on service, man. It's got to be that. So, again, I want to thank you all for coming today. Next week we're doing Clover. Appreciate the stories, guys. Appreciate the input. Let's have a great week. Let's kick off May. May's a great month. Let's kick off May right. Let's go out there. We'll see you guys next week, and hopefully we all have a lot more deals under our belt by next week. So, thanks again, everybody.